Hello and welcome to my sewing room. I've got a very special guest today, someone who is a sewer and she lives in London, but she's not just a sewer. Oh, no. She's an author. She's got a beautiful blog. She's got an Instagram account and she's absolutely amazing. Whatever she puts her mind to, and a knitter. I forgot the knitting. So give a great big warm welcome to Kate Davies, known as Fabricated on Instagram and fabricated.com as her blog. And you've written an amazing book, and the name is Making Life More Beautiful. Is that right?
Yes. Thank you for that great introduction. That's amazing. And it's lovely to see you. I feel a bit like I'm on the Barry Humphries show. I'm not hearing many Australian accents at the moment. It's all very English round here, sadly. Lot of people have gone home, I think, worried about COVID and so on. So um, London's very quiet at the moment. It wasn't quiet when you and Bruce came to see me, though, exploding through my door, coming in and sitting with us and looking at my sewing room and having a drink together. That was really nice. A little snack as well. I don't remember too much what we ate, but it was lovely to have you.
It was just wonderful. Nick did the cooking, we did the talking and drinking, and we all had a fabulous night. And it was just so wonderful to connect. I mean, Instagram,
Yes.
if we have any complaints, we could have a few, but one thing that we don't ever complain about is the connections between sewing people. And it's so encouraging to meet and chat. And I think following you on Instagram and looking to seeing what you're up to, you blew me away, Kate, with your last entry, the painting of you and Nick in overalls. Oh my gosh. Tell me about that painting.
Well, it's really, I love sewing, and I'd got to the stage where I've just got too many clothes. I haven't got enough occasions to wear them for. The truth is, I do wear dungarees around the house and slippers and very relaxed clothes as I'm dressed today. I did think about dressing up for you, Anne, because this is such an occasion. But here I am just in my sloppy old clothes, working from home all the time. You want to be comfortable. And there's something about dungarees, it doesn't fit around the waist. They're the sort of thing little kids wear when they've got nappies on. Pregnant women like them. But working from home, to me, the dungarees are the best outfit. And it's really funny because Nick likes to work in his workshop. He makes a lot of things in wood, and he has dungarees on. So now that picture just sort of summed us up for the day. We were both wearing dungarees, both looking very casual. But in lockdown, it was very isolating. This point you've just made about connectivity, using social media and being on Zoom today, it is really nice to be able to connect with people. But it was very isolating. We didn't even see our children or our grandchildren for months. And it was really disturbing. You might know that I run a housing association. So we were trying to run an organization with about 2,500 people, looking after a lot of older and vulnerable people, a lot of poor people, a lot of street homeless people, and we needed to try and do that virtually. Of course, some staff had to go out all the way through, and we had to try and protect them best we could. So it was a very anxiety-provoking time. And I suppose in that time, the idea of looking nice and wearing makeup and all of that just went by the wayside. So in a way, that was what the picture was trying to sum up. But, I never learned to draw or paint, despite being very interested in color, being interested in making clothes. And I felt this is the time of life now to do an art foundation, which is what most of the kids do at 17, 18 before they go to art college. And I did that course for a year. It closed early because of COVID, but it did teach me the basics of drawing and painting. So I feel now I've got another skill set and I'm really enjoying that. It's sort of bringing other things together.
You're very modest because it wasn't just that you learned how to paint and you painted a portrait of you and your husband. No, you captured the emotion. And that is an absolute talent. That must have been in there waiting to get out for quite some time. It wasn't a replica of you and Nick, but what it did was bring your heart out into the faces.
Well, somebody else wrote to me, "Don't give up your day job," because I'm not really, which is sort of true. I'm still a very much a beginner painter, but it is interesting, isn't it? When you're a bit older, you have got more perhaps awareness of feelings and more awareness that it's not all about appearances. It's about your heart, your soul, how you feel inside, your relationships with people, and this is what really matters in life. I mean, we want to make ourselves look as nice as we can, but there is something more important going on, and I think that will come through in our work, whatever our work is, our day job or our creative endeavors. People are making a quilt, for example, for a loved one. They're putting hours and hours of love and time into it. As women, even when we cook a cake or make beds, we're doing this with love for our family, and it putting love and sentiment into our work, I think, is what makes homemade things so much nicer than a factory made thing. Even if it's a bit bodgy and it's not, the seams aren't exactly straight and you can see the zip, it's still made with that sense of creativity and love and generosity and learning that satisfy the soul. That's why we do it, I think. It isn't that the clothes are much better than anything you can buy in a shop. Quite often they cost a lot more money to make than buying something, but it's just that sense of real individuality and real self-expression that you can achieve. I didn't expect to be getting this deep on a Saturday morning, and but you bring it out of me because you've got this deep empathy as well. I know that.
It's that heart. It's so lovely to swim in the sea with that. It really
Mm.
is that immersion with someone. And there is nothing more boring than someone who's had a perfect life, who's had everything given
Mm.
to them. I have to say that Bruce and I will sit down, whether it's one of those talent contests, Susan Boyle. I think I had to watch that when that first happened. I cried every single time she sung. And I think that's what, as you've been on a bit of a journey and you've seen a lot of things, we want to see someone who's fallen over get back up again. And it's
Yes, yeah.
beautiful. It is so, and
Mm.
they're surprised that they're even liked. And that gets me,
Yeah.
I'm on a whole new role of crying. And and Bruce usually goes first, and I know because his glasses fog up.
Oh.
He's an emotional soul, which I think's
Yes,
great.
it's good. It is, and I think, I mean, I just one of my sons is getting married next year, which I'm really pleased about. But I I once wrote a blog post about this sort of mother of the bride outfit or mother of the groom, where you go out and you get a whole set of clothes from a shop, including a hat, and you end up looking utterly ridiculous. If you make something for yourself, and I can make hats or floral headdresses, and express something about the couple or about your love for each other. And that is so much more meaningful than kind of buying the whole outfit for £1,000, £2,000. You do something that is meaningful. And so I am going to make something special for that wedding. I'm thinking of getting a piece of silk and painting it
Yes.
with things that are meaningful to us, about my son Gus, and he's chosen a beautiful girl who's got Indian and Malaysian heritage, and I'm thinking, how can I express that in the colours or in the design, representing the union in some way in the outfit. So I'm planning to make a silk dress for August next year, but I'm thinking about it already.
I've got, I am just feeling the vibe of that too. I can just see you absolutely blowing us out of the water. And you
I
better
don't know.
post all the journey up until actually making it, because that's one thing. There is always a process with you, Kate. You go
Yes,
through the process, you take us on the journey, and you show us how you do it, which is just
yeah,
so liberating. Because if you just, oh, I just painted fabric. Well, no one has a clue how to do that. And I remember
yeah.
that dress. I think we were visiting you when you just finished doing that that dress. Maybe it was shortly after you'd already posted on Instagram. You'd painted the dress. Was, I think that was, and you were showing that to me in your sewing room.
Was it the peaches? Was it sort of turquoise with peaches on it? I don't know. I've done a few. I
Yeah.
like painting on silk. It's really nice. But now I'm learning to paint. Maybe my painting is going to evolve. I don't know.
Yes.
So that's an interesting project. But I agree with you about the process. Half the pleasure for me is, I feel even if I buy a bought pattern, which I do sometimes, it's still a process of designing.
Mm.
And I know this is something that you understand very well because you're always thinking about somebody's figure, how to make the best of their body, someone's coloring, what will suit them, what will, be a personal an outfit that really enhances somebody, expresses something about them. And so there's a lot of thought that goes into putting a garment together, I think. Not just the fit and the style, but does it make the most of someone's beautiful figure and lovely coloring and gorgeous eyes? And for my daughter-in-law to be, I did her colors, and we discovered that warm colors really suit her. So that's really helped her with planning her wedding, where she's going to have some sort of brick orangey reds. She's going to have some deep greens because she's got quite deep colouring. And so although she's going to buy a dress, she wants something beaded and something OTT, which I'm no way going to go near. For her party dress, I said I'd make that. So maybe that'll be another project for me.
That sounds
But I
exciting.
like to have a project, don't you? I like to have
Yes.
something, even when sitting at my table here, this is my work computer. I've got knitting on the table. I've got a bit of mending, and little things. So if I'm in a boring meeting, I shouldn't be saying this in public, but in a boring meeting, I sometimes do a little bit of mending or a little bit of knitting. Yeah, it's always have something on the go. I'm sure you do too. I know you're Mrs. Busy.
Oh my gosh, it's just I feel as though this whole pandemic
Yeah.
today I'm wearing what I wore down the street because I've been wearing gym gear because we've been doing our walk together. We have it in lockdown stage 4, which is really horrific. One person can only go shopping by themselves. If you walk, you can walk for an hour, but you can only walk with one other person. I think I'm just summarizing that. One other person, and you've only got an hour. So if we do any exercise and we want to have coffee together, he's got to wait in the car. I can't have coffee with him in the street. I don't know if if you don't do what they say, you get a hefty fine. It's
Oh,
just
really?
crazy. 8 o'clock, everything's in darkness. You are not allowed outside past 8 o'clock. And the fines are unbelievable. A woman smuggled herself into another state yesterday, and she's going to be in jail for 6 months. It
Crikey,
is
that's very, very strict. I mean, we do
intense.
have to be sensible, but I think there's been a massive overreaction. I mean, a lot of kids have been out of school,
Mm,
and therefore their education is really suffering. A
yes.
lot of children haven't had the vaccinations because the doctors haven't been open. There's some really basic health, mental health, physical health stuff that we are messing up
Yep.
for fear of a virus that you've got a one in a million chance of dying of this. I mean,
Mm,
the odds are you're as more likely or as likely to drown in your own bath as die
mm.
from COVID. I mean,
Unfortunately,
there are some high risk people, high risk
yeah,
areas, high risk practices. But if you avoid those,
yeah.
it's really very low risk problem for us.
Uh,
But we still have
yeah.
to be careful. I'm not saying that.
It did get into the aged home, so we're losing so many aged people. They're dying every day.
Yes.
It just got in. It it just happened, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, they're not resuscitating or anything. They're just it's
Oh
terrible.
dear.
It's really really terrible. But
Mm.
you never know how it's going to hit your town. You just don't know, and they've got to make the best decisions possible. And I'd hate to be in their position, really. I'd hate to have
Mm.
that on my head. So I'm
Yeah, it
trying not
is
to
a
get a
very
fine.
difficult one.
It
Yeah.
is, and crazy times because you forget sometimes when you're in the middle of a project. I don't know about you, and I think I'll just go and no, I won't. No, I won't. I'll
Well,
just
at least we've got the internet and also internet shopping, which, my daughter gave me a pair of jeans to mend, and I was able to get a zip delivered to the house within a day or two, which was perfect. It does make it a lot easier to do stuff.
It's such a
Yeah.
strange time. I don't really know if we'll ever be the same again, but I hope there'll be good things that come out of it, because that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Appreciating life, appreciating the small things, and
Mm.
even
I
letting
think there's been a
someone
lot
hug
of
me.
kindness. A lot of
Yeah.
people have looked out for each other and have tried to help, and I hope we can keep that. But I think the working from home is probably quite a good thing for a lot of people. They're perhaps spending more time with their kids, takes a bit of pressure off. We've been wasting an awful lot of time traveling.
Mm,
Not to criticize trams and people who work on them for a moment, but we
yes.
spend a lot of time on public transport. Perhaps that time has been wasted.
Mm,
Um, and maybe it's not good for the planet to be moving around quite so much as we have been. So there could be some. I've really enjoyed being closer to nature during lockdown. Like you, we've been going for walks, but although I am from London, live in London, I've been staying in the country with Nick, and we've got badgers in the garden, we've got foxes,
wow.
mice, rabbits, all sorts of love, and birds, the most amazing range of birds that we've been looking at. And it just brings you back towards the basics, which is probably good for all of us, to just take a breath and pause a little bit, um, and finding our creativity perhaps going in a different direction than perhaps what it was before.
It reminds me of the time when we had a 10-year drought, and there were
Ah,
children that were brought up that never knew about rain. And
ah,
I'll never forget walking outside, and it started, the drought broke, and the
mm,
children, I think people had photos on, it just went around on Facebook. They couldn't work out who turned the shower on. Their faces were
ah.
absolutely hysterical that they, and, and being someone who had been in rain recently, to see the awe and the, how did that happen? I'm outside. Where is this coming from? So I'm thinking, I wonder whether we'll have that renewed
Mm,
thrill when something
yeah,
happens, when someone grabs you in an embrace in the middle of
yeah.
a city and doesn't rob you but actually hugs you. I don't know.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
yeah,
that be
yeah, yeah.
lovely?
Absolutely. The hug after deprivation of hugs has been very, very meaningful.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I think this idea that you mustn't touch other people, it's inhuman and
mm,
damaging. We, as a family, we didn't embrace the children for a while, and then we just said, look, this is ridiculous. It's important. So
mm.
now we're all over each other.
Oh, poor Bruce. He's missing hugs, but I never give him any anyway. So it's like, Bruce, you've already been
You're
primed
not
for
going to
this time.
start now.
Oh, he's hilarious. But when he hugs you, honestly, Kate, you may
It's
not
worth
get out of it.
having.
He breaks your ribs. He's too strong, and it's like it's
Oh,
painful. You
a
count
bear
down.
hug.
Yes, and he
Yeah.
says, "I know you're counting the seconds." And I said, "Have I got down there enough?" And he's like, 10. All right, we'll call that a hug." Anyway, I'm mean, but I was brought up hugless, so what can I do? You can't help the way you're brought
Oh,
up.
no.
Cold upbringing. Um,
No.
oh well. But it was fine by me. So I'm not suffering with the lack of hugs, but I do hear he's feeling it. So do you have
Mm.
to wear masks in London?
In shops, we do, and we took the children. I've got the grandchildren at the moment. We went to the theatre on Saturday, and we had to wear masks in the theatre, which was, and we were sitting quite a long way from the next people. But it was fun. I'm glad we were able to do it. It was a relatively normal thing to do. And on public transport, we have to wear masks, but people tend not to like them, and I'm not sure. It's polite if you've got a cough, not to be coughing all over people, but it does restrict conversation, and you can't hear people properly, you can't read their expressions so well. I hope it isn't a trend that goes on forever.
You can't wear lipstick, Kate. Do you realise that?
I've more or less stopped wearing makeup altogether. I was thinking early on in lockdown, let my skin breathe, just have fresh air, fresh food. let me see if nature is, good for me. And I think it's been okay. I've got some sun on me, which I wouldn't normally, normally in an office for long hours. I could go through summer with no tan at all, but this year I've got a little bit of a tan, which I feel is really nice,
It is
healthy,
lovely.
and looks okay.
You look perfect. I tell you, you haven't changed a jot. You still got that wonderful smile. And I
Mm.
just loved looking at your Instagram with a picture of you when your children were young. And I thought, oh, isn't that a
Oh.
glorious photo? And where did the
Yeah, it's
time
nice
go?
looking at the old, in the old days, we didn't have quite so many photos. It wasn't an Instagram moment every moment of the day. And of course, you lose a lot of pictures. They're quite precious, aren't they?
Yeah.
Going back to those old photos of ourselves as children or our parents as children, and looking at how life has changed and how fashions change. And, um, the history of fashion is always very interesting to me, how people got married in the past, how they dressed their children, what they did for going out, and in a way, it's almost. I mean, we're talking about dungarees, but there's also the uniform of trainers. Everybody wears trainers, from little kids to grandmas, and um, we like to have comfortable feet. And to me, looking at a sort of high heel court shoe that women are supposed to wear for work, we've had some legislation now that employers are not able to insist that women wear this painful footwear, and I think that's a really good thing. Why should we? I mean, I'm not saying anyone who wants to wear them shouldn't wear them, but I don't think we should be obliged to wear them. And just dressing more for comfort and speed, so we can run around. I was helping someone learn to ride a bike earlier, and you need to be able to just run. You can't do that in a tight skirt. So I think that being more physically free from the days when women were corseted and wearing tight skirts and high heels and stockings that ladder as soon as you look at them, a lot of that has gone, except for perhaps special occasions. And I think that's a great thing for the sort of liberation of women to have those choices, really.
Look,
I
it's true.
wish men could choose to wear a dress every now and again, actually.
Yeah. Well, they do in some places, don't they? That lovely
Mm.
flowing gown type thing. I think someone I worked with was leaving once and I made them what do you call it, a caftan, a guy's caftan.
Yes.
He put
Yeah.
it on straight away. I thought, oh, I think he's been, hankering for one of these.
Wanting to
And
do that. Yeah, they like to
yes,
get a bit of air around the old,
yeah,
you know, the other areas. But, in lots of cultures in Africa, there's a lot of menswear that is not trousers, and in India, the men quite often wear a sort of looped piece of fabric around the lower half. There's lots of models of what men can wear. But in a way, everybody in London, while the weather's been decent, and here in the country, everyone's wearing shorts. We feel quite Australian or
yes,
Californian. I mean, it's not a very British thing, wearing shorts,
yeah.
but we're all doing it because it's comfy, and it's been very hot. We've had a lot of decent weather for a change, probably to do with global warming, which is of course not so good. But it's
Yeah.
been a great summer. And if we'd have had to do lockdown in the grey, miserable, short days that we have in England,
Mm.
it would have been far worse,
Oh
really.
gosh, yes. Now,
Mm.
I'm going to ask you a little question. I don't know when I read it, but I read something that you were on a journey of writing up your experiences for a trip you took when you were younger. Now, tell me more about that. I'm like, oh, I can't wait for that to come out.
Well, it's what I do want to do that. When I was 18 and I was finishing school, I decided to go on a road trip across the United States. I had a friend who was staying in the western part of Vancouver, in top part of America, top left, and had a friend in New York. I had one in Montreal. I think those were the three spots. So I thought, well, I'll call in those three places, and then I will travel in a big circle around, landing in New York, going up to Montreal, across the top of Canada, down the west coast of America, and then across the center of America back to New York. And I did it mainly by hitchhiking. I
Oh,
did it sometimes on my own, but mainly with other people. And it was an incredible moment in time, to see another country, to see how people lived. I met such incredible generosity. A lot of Americans didn't travel at that time. I mean, even today, Americans don't tend to have passports. They've got such a big country. Why would they bother going anywhere else? And they were intrigued by foreigners, and they loved meeting English people. And we were taken into people's homes. We were invited to parties. We were given marijuana by the side of the road, all sorts of things, many acts of generosity, bought beer in bars. And during that time, as I say, I learned a lot about the world. I learned a lot about myself, and I had a fantastic time. So when I went to university, I didn't have a year off like a lot of young people do today. I think I had 2 or 3 months, but during that time, I learned a lot. And I can't remember exactly the journey because it's a long time ago. So I'm trying to recall it, and bits come back. And I've been in touch with some of the people who were on that journey with me to get their recollections. So it's brought a lot of things back. But it's hard because my memory really uh, doesn't really fill in all the stuff. I don't remember everything, but I remember quite a lot of things. So I'm going to write that up. And then the desire is to repeat the journey. But of course, since COVID, we've decided we're not flying anywhere.
No.
So whether I actually do that in my life or not, I don't know. At the moment, it's an act of imagination, and maybe I'll put it on my blog eventually. I mean, I closed my writing fashion blog because I felt I'd said everything I could say. And then I started the art. I've got an art blog now, which is called Fabricated Art.
Oh, good.
Um, yeah, so I write about my art at the moment. And then when I get to the end of that, we have an exhibition in October, which we're preparing for. So I'm sort of still writing at the moment. But then after that, Anne, my next thing relates to your interesting question. Nick and I are going to buy a camper van because all my travels of my youth were in a Volkswagen van, and they've really modernized them now and nice. So a new one or nearly new one. And we're going to travel in it. And I thought I'd do a blog about that,
Yes.
maybe travel around Europe. And the interesting thing for me, working from home, maybe you can work from a van instead of from home if you have the connectivity. And, during the day I can do my work at my desk, and then we drive on to the next destination. Maybe we're in France, we have some snails or frog's legs or something really
Yes.
typical, and then some baguettes the next morning, and then we drive to the next location and I sit there and work. So that's a bit of an idea. I don't know whether I'll pull it off, and I'm not sure my employer is going to say yes, but I don't see why not, to be honest, because um, this is how I work all day, is just talking to a screen. At the moment, I'm going into London 1 day a week to see people and so on, but I think there might be a way to achieve this. So that's a possible idea of a project for the future.
I think that's one thing that we need to have is a hope for a future. I
Yeah.
think, and I think holding
Yeah.
on to, I don't even know sometimes if the hope has to be the true destination. It doesn't matter.
Mm,
We need to be going somewhere because I
yes.
think the hardest thing with anything that's going on, it overtakes your brain, which then causes
Yes.
you to implode. So
Mm,
holding on to something and just trying to do something with it. So with sewing, I find I'm wearing gym clothes every day and I force myself to get out of them and, put lipstick on after I've got home and wear it around the house because I find without the lipstick, I don't feel like me. My mother used to wear
mm,
that slash of red lipstick. She was a nurse and she'd go out for night duty and she'd have her white uniform on, slash of the red, and Pond's, oh no, oil of Ylang all over her face because she did go out into the elements and catch the bus to work. So that would sink into her face. And by the time she got to work, she'd look like she'd just been moisturised. So growing up with the red lipstick, I think I see that as what I loved about her face, the red lipstick. Not that
yes.
I wear red, I wear orange. So
Yeah.
I think that we've got to do something. Otherwise, how are we going to relate to other people if we all are in the same boat at the same time. Because if we all sit and think in the same way, it could be dangerous. So we have a bit of a seesaw thing going on, Bruce and I. Some days
Mm.
he's not so happy, and other days I'm, fighting it. So I'll sew. And he goes out and there's no one on the tram. So we really do have to
Yeah.
balance. I think balancing each other and doing what we can and doing something for someone else too. That really is lovely.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely helps. I mean, I think that it's intriguing about the lipstick. They say in the Second World War, lipstick sales were really strong because women needed to do something to
Mm.
make themselves feel good in a time when they couldn't even really get enough to eat. They were working hard, they had a lot of deprivation, and the lipstick just made them feel good about themselves. We do need to feel good about ourselves, and if you can get that from your partner or from friends or from being generous and giving with giving to others, that can all make you feel good yourself. I think we all have to try and find ways to sort of keep our spirits up,
Yes.
as the old fashioned word was, really. There's no point dwelling on the negatives, is there? It just makes you feel worse. So looking for the best in others, the best in a situation, and as you say, being hopeful about a better world, which it's there. The better world is there if you just look at it. I mean, there are obviously terrible things. I'm so sort of hurt by the what's happening in America around
Mm.
Black people, Black Lives Matter, and more people being killed, and it's really troubling. My organisation is majority Black people. We serve majority Black people. I've got Black people in my family, and it's really very difficult to sort of deal with it. It's such a sort of terrible history and a terrible way that people are treated. But you can't spend all your time focusing on being, a victim. Sometimes you've got to go, let's take where we are and make the best of it. And that's what I try to do at work and in the family. Whatever bad stuff is there, try to overcome it. Try and work with others to anyway, as I said, I thought this was going to be about about clothes and blogging and color, and here we are. We're really in the depths of very interesting and important topics. I do hope that it resonates a bit with people who are listening,
Yeah.
because I'm sure people are in a similar place where they're perhaps being a bit more thoughtful, spending a bit more time together, working out how to live in the
Yeah.
future. Mm.
We don't want to survive, we want to thrive. And
Well said.
we
Well said.
we really do. I mean, people have already been here and done that. It's
Mm.
historic. I'm reading a range of books at the moment about building cathedrals in Ken Follett, I think it's the books on the building cathedrals, Pillars of the Earth, and it's like, my gosh,
Oh,
those days were.
you've read those. They're
I
great
I
books.
love them, and I'm reading that at night, and I'm thinking, oh, I've got nothing on this. Seriously, this was hard. They couldn't eat. They had to do some
Yeah.
shocking things. So
Yes.
it's looking.
Is it? I can't remember the name of those books, but you really should put them on your Instagram or whatever, because they're very good. But
Oh, they're
there's
fabulous.
an interesting story in those about the wool industry,
Mm.
in the area where I'm living at the moment, in the Cotswolds, because in the Roman times they brought in a sheep called they called it the golden fleece, because the wool trade was so profitable, and it enabled people by, first of all, creating the woolen cloth and the woolen thread, and then by dyeing it. And there's still a wool trade around here today, just to make a few things like the baize for the when people play snooker, the green fabric
Oh,
on
yeah.
there, and the red that was used for the coats of the people in the army, and the balls at Wimbledon are covered in wool made in this area. Still, there's this sort of remainder of the wool industry here. And it's been going on through the medieval times,
Mm.
which those books are about. Um, and how the textile trade created enormous wealth in Britain, and in this particular part of the Cotswolds, where there are cathedrals all over the place, the
Mm.
wool churches, there are grand houses, there are monasteries, there are places where tremendous wealth was congregated. You go to other parts of the UK, it's just bleak. There's
Mm,
nothing.
mm,
It's the same in Australia, but much
yep,
more modern history. But um, it is a fascinating place to see how textiles are so much sort of part of our lives. And how wool is a very British thing. It's a very Australian thing too, isn't it?
yeah.
And of course,
Yeah.
cotton is more something that's come from America and
Mm,
India and other much hotter places. But this wool was so much part, whether it's a kilt or a blanket or a Welsh style of wool or a Hebridean style of wool. It's very much part of our British culture, the wool industry. And there's so many great local products that we can use and design with. It's very inspirational. Um, of course, to go to a place like India and see the
oh,
silks and the colours that they have there, it's such a contrast with our sort of heathery greys and our sort of soft old colours, that sort of with a vintage feel, and then you compare that with that sort of bright explosion, which you also have in Australia, your plants and much brighter colours. Whereas, of course, the sort of traditional English complexion, which is sort of so-called peaches and cream, very pale, we suit some of those muted, washed out, softer colours that go with our climate and our flora and fauna. Whereas, more hotter countries where people have darker complexions, the colours just so enhancing and so enlivening. They just look great, in the brightest yellows and oranges and purples that would make me look just awful. There we
and
go.
you're definitely, you've got your finger on the pulse with your colouring, and I really love when you knit something, because really, let's face it, if you don't know what colours suit you, why would you spend all that time knitting? All that, oh my gosh, all those hours.
All that effort. Yes. What I've got here is some wool. This is what I'm knitting at the moment. I dyed them both. One's
Oh,
green and one's pink. Um, and
they're
they're going to
beautiful.
be together.
Oh my
Yes. So the
gosh,
green's a little bit soft, but the bright pink, I love
it's
that. It just gives a
gorgeous.
bit of liveliness. Where you use orange, I use a blue pink. Yes.
Oh, I actually have some fold over elastic, which is very similar to that, and it's raspberry, more raspberry than it's got more of a warm hue to it. But green and pink together, oh my goodness, I love it.
Yeah. They set each other off. So that's one of my projects for my art exhibition, so I've got to knit that up. But it's got a chart. I don't know if you've ever done that. You get a picture and you turn it into knitting chart. There's a
Oh,
lovely little program that someone's put out. If you put an image there, it turns it into either an embroidery pattern or a knitting pattern.
oh wow.
Yeah, I've mentioned that on my art blog. That's a great thing to someone's created. Turn anything into a picture or a knitted garment.
Now, there was one thing that you talked about as something that you do for your family, that being a person who has the responsibility to keep things running, and that you're keeping you running as well. So, how, share with us a word of encouragement or something that inspires you, that keeps you going and keeps you on point. What is a word that we can take into our hearts and see if we can apply it? Give us a tip that
It,
you use.
yeah, I just think people are different. I think I was probably born an optimist and a bit of an extrovert. And some people don't really want to be with a lot of other people. They're quite withdrawn. They get their energy from themselves. And the things that make me tick are going to be different to other people. I'm not sure there's general applicability. Um, I suppose, something that might be generally applicable, sort of look for good look for the good thing in the person, look for the good thing in the situation, always look for the best, assume the best in people. But I mean, I just think everybody is individual, and it's such such a struggle through your whole life to understand other people. That's what your job is, really. That's what our
Mm,
task as humans is, to try and understand other people. And your only reference point is kind of yourself. So I suppose it starts with self-awareness. If you can be self-aware, then it makes you more aware of others. Um, I don't know. I have nothing to say except for, make every minute count. Try
yeah,
to do things that make you happy, do things that are useful, do things that enhance people's lives, and make the most of your time, because we're only here for a short time.
it
I don't
really.
know. Are you're not a grandparent yet, are you?
No,
No.
no.
You've got that to look forward to, because
Well,
it's a
I
great time.
hope so. I
The,
hope so.
it's a great time of life. And I heard Mervyn King, who was the director of the Bank of England, and there's a sweet story. He was in love with the girl at university who went to Norway, married someone else, had children, and he never married. He just was in love with her, and nobody else would do for him. And then later, I think she divorced, or her husband died, I don't know which. And they got in touch again, and he was still in love with her, and they married. So
Oh,
he took her on, and her two daughters, and then the two grandchildren. And he was just so happy with this sort of joy in later life. And he said that there's a Norwegian saying that the pudding dish is the sweetest dish. The first course, the main course, and then the pudding. And the pudding, of course, is being the grandparent, and being the parent is having the main course, and being a young person is the first course. But the pudding is the sweetest part of the meal, and the nicest part of life. And I think you've done your thing, really, and you are now enabling others to do their thing, whether that's at work as a senior manager, or whether that's at home as a grandparent. That sort of handing on to the next generation, enabling others to thrive, enabling others to um, find what turns them on and what makes them tick, and support them without being critical all the time or challenging all the time, just to allow them to be themselves, and help them. That's what gives me great pleasure now. I mean, I don't want to feel like a complete old person. I'm still, working hard and loving my job, but I think there comes a time when you sort of give things up and let the next generation take them on, and to value new ways of doing things, whether it's, I know you've had some help from the young generation to get online today.
yeah,
They're much better than us at this stuff.
yep.
They're just streets ahead of us, and we're sort of limping behind, doing a little bit of editing, or you know uh, uh, maybe we can teach them things, but they can teach us a lot as well. And I think staying alive to new trends, and not feeling that we know it all, and our generation is superior in some way. We've certainly made a mess of plenty of things. Let's see if the younger generation can do better.
And
Yeah,
keeping ourselves fresh is by trying new things. And I think you
correct.
really inspire me. I love reading about what you're doing, and I love seeing what you do. And I don't I don't love things that are a replica. I love to
Mm,
see the little quirky bits, the personality in the painting.
yes.
And I remember I
Yeah.
was doing a little painting class, and there was this one woman who was told at school that she was awful at painting,
Mm,
awful. Every single bear she painted looked like, I think one of those, an Oompa Loompa. It had an Oompa Loompa look to it. And I have to say, she loved it. We all were delighted with her. It Every single thing had this kind of a resemblance, and it was absolutely wonderful. And we were all
mm,
oohing and ahhing over it. And she said, "I was told I could never do anything."
mm,
And we do have that in our background where we think, well, she can do it, but I don't think I've got the talent. And so, with you providing the process of how you went about and do it, you
mm,
unlock the door. And I think it's
mm,
worthy of people to have a read and see what you're doing, how you do it, and whether it might be something that they could attempt. So, we will put all your links to your
thank you.
blogs and your Instagram, and you can help others feel like they can walk through
Mm,
some of that journey and maybe tackle it themselves. And I really wanted to have you on because you are very inspirational. And I've met you in
You-
real life, so I know how lovely you are in real
Oh,
life.
you're very kind. You're bringing me to tears now. Yeah, it's been lovely to talk to you, Anne. It's actually a real moment of deep connection across a long distance, and yeah, it's quite an emotional moment. Thank you for instigating it and being in touch. Lots of love to you and anybody who's around who knows either of us and watches
Yeah.
this. Lots of love to all of you.
Thanks so
Thanks.
much, Kate Davies. You are an inspiration. Keep up the good work. I'm looking forward to seeing all that you do.
Lots of love.
Well, the bobbin is empty, and I just want to encourage you to sew what you have, know your style ingredients, know what colours suit you, so that making sewing decisions will be so much easier. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Anne Whalley, follow me on my blog, annewhalley.com, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I look forward to seeing you again in my sewing room. See you later.